All right, what's up, everybody? We are back, and holy shit, things have popped off. I used to count myself in what you might call the nothing ever happens bros. But goddamn, after Venezuela and Iran now, it's hard to say, man. It's hard to defend that. So we're on to this. Back to you guys here a little late. We know now Trump has launched the war against Iran. The Ayatollah's dead. A bunch of the top 40 people in the Iranian government are dead. The people that Trump apparently wanted to install are all dead. Top leaders from the IRGC dead. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court dead. The Ayatollah's wife, daughter, and granddaughter are all dead. His son is apparently still alive. We're getting some mixed reports there. But holy shit, things escalated quickly. Friday night, I wasn't even watching the news. I was hanging out, having a good time. Woke up Saturday morning and saw, oh shit, we're at war with Iran. No declaration of war to Congress, nothing like that. We're not going to do those, constitutional things anymore. But nonetheless, here we are. We're at war. So this is something that we figured was coming. We knew that when Prime Minister of India Modi left Israel, the shit was probably going to pop off. I think it was the same day he left. They ended up launching this war. It's funny. It was the Ayatollah is so dumb or was so dumb, and his cabinet leaders. For some reason, they all decided the day everyone suspected this war would pop off to have a meeting in broad daylight. So Israel and the United States struck, killed them all. I guess they were just in some building having a meeting with all the heads of the government about what to do. I mean, how arrogant you have to be to think the Mossad and the United States don't know where you are. You're not going to go down in some, bomb-proof bunker or, we didn't even have to break out the bunker busters with the B-2s. Nope. Just regular old conventional weapons able to take out the Ayatollah and decapitate the Iranian government. So what do you expect, man? Those people, it's just too dumb to believe they were really that arrogant. But so Trump, let's get into what the whole intro to this war was. How did we know this shit was coming? Well, Trump's been signaling it was coming. Bibi Netanyahu has wanted this war for a long time. Israel's wanted this war. So Donald Trump, though, campaigned against this war in Iran. He said, no forever wars in the Middle East, no regime change wars. He said all that. People voted for Donald Trump because he said he was the guy you vote for when you don't want wars in the Middle East. So what do? We kick Joe Biden and Kamala Harris out of office, elect Donald Trump, and what do you know? Back to wars in the Middle East, because you can't get away from it. That's like this whole bullshit about democracy where people are like, oh, it's great. Peaceful revolution's always possible. No, it's not. Okay. There was no candidate to vote for to not go to war with Iran. This was happening under either president. And so let's get into a little bit of what they were saying. So here is Steve Witkoff, okay, the top guy in Donald Trump's negotiating team. Okay, he's the one making these deals with Russia. He's the one making deals in Ukraine. He stopped the war in Gaza. A lot of people hate this guy, and I don't really get it. He seemed to do a good job negotiating the ceasefire in the Israel-Gaza war, but here he is just lying through his teeth. Let's take a look here.
Up to 60%. They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb making material. And that's really dangerous. So we can't have that.
There you go. Steve Witkoff. Iran's a week away from industrial grade bomb making material. No, they weren't. Israel was a long ways away from getting their nukes back. And Donald Trump talked about that right after the 12-day war. Donald Trump says, no, Iran can't get nukes anymore. Donald Trump says they completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear capabilities. So why is Steve Witkoff lying? Well, because he's setting up the pretext for war. So in the State of the Union, Donald Trump kind of parroted the same thing. He's saying, hey, we cannot allow Iran to get nukes. One of the other lines was, they've killed 30,000 protesters. They've shown no evidence of that. Okay, we know they did kill protesters. I don't like to get hung up on the 30,000 thing, because even if they killed 100 protesters, I mean, why? Okay, killing protesters is terrible. Okay, even if it was just 100, that's not a good thing. Okay, it's also not a reason for us to go conduct regime change wars. And here's how we know: because our allies kill protesters all the time. You think Saudi Arabia doesn't kill protesters? Of course they do. But we're fine with that because they're one of our client states. So I don't agree with this whole thing that just because they were killing protesters, which they were, because they're in a terrible authoritarian regime, but for some reason that justifies us going in there and decapitating the government and likely plunging the country into civil war. That doesn't really follow, but that's what we decided to do. And the messaging has been all over the place here, man. I mean, I want to see if I can find this tweet from Matt Walsh and Caroline Levitt, because it's perfect what they end up saying here. Let me see if I can find. Okay, here we go. I'm actually going to throw these back on here. So here's what Matt Walsh says. Matt Walsh tweets, he says, so far, we've heard that although we killed the whole Iranian regime, this was not a regime change war. And although we obliterated their nuclear program in the 12-Day War, we had to do this because of their nuclear program. And although Iran was not planning any attacks on the U.S., they might also have been, depending on who you ask. And although we are not fighting this war to free the Iranian people, they are now free, or might be, depending on who seizes power. And we have no idea who that will be. The messaging on this thing, to put it mildly, is confusing, end quote. So, and that brings up another point that I didn't even bring up. Another excuse Donald Trump and, tons of other politicians are bringing up, saying, these people, they're not Arabs, they're Persians. These are the great Persian people. They're highly educated. They love freedom. They do have a history of democracy. They're being oppressed. So it's our duty as the leader of the free world to go in and free them, which is kind of weird because there's no guarantee these people are going to be free after this. We're going to plunge their country into civil war. Okay, the government's going to collapse at some point here. The government hasn't collapsed yet. There have been 2 more Ayatollahs that have been assassinated within like 24 hours of them being appointed. There's no guarantee. Like, Trump has clearly said he has no plan for who's going to take over. There's no process to transition them to a democracy. There's not even a dictator or monarch we have lined up that's going to protect civil liberties, of course, because those two things don't even make sense together. None of that's been in line. All we've done is decapitate the regime and thrown our hands up and say, you know what? We'll let them figure it out now. And maybe it'll end up better for them. Maybe they'll end up instituting a government that works for them and stands up for those people. And I hope they do. Good, great. But that's not because of the United States. We haven't set up anybody. There's word that we had 2 people in mind that were a part of the regime that we might have wanted to take over, and they were killed in the initial strikes. So they will not be taking over the Iranian government. So after that little aside, let's read Caroline Levitt's response to Matt Walsh now, this incoherent crap. So she responds to him, on Saturday, President Trump released a statement laying out clear objectives to the American people for Operation Epic Fury. Let me reiterate them. Destroy the Iranian regime's missiles and raise their missile industry to the ground. Iran did not possess a single missile that could hit the United States. Okay. They do possess missiles and did possess missiles that could hit American military bases that surround Iran. And they have had those missiles for decades. Yet it wasn't a reason to launch a war against them. Okay. Next, she says it's to annihilate the Iranian regime's navy. Okay, I wasn't even aware they had a real navy. I think they got some speedboats with 50 cals attached to them, but okay. Then she says, ensure the regime's terrorist proxies can no longer destabilize the region or the world and attack our forces. Not really sure how this war is really achieving that. They still have proxies that are and terrorist organizations that are going to operate on their own. Well, we're yet to see what progress is going to be made here. And then she says, stop them from making and using IEDs or roadside bombs, which have gravely wounded and killed thousands and thousands of people, including many Americans. Please go watch Scott Horton's video debunking this lie, how they attribute a lot of the IED deaths in the Iraq war to Iranian bomb makers. That is a lie. The deaths of American soldiers in Iraq should be placed squarely at the feet of Dick Cheney, President Bush, everyone else, and the lawmakers who enabled that war, and then, of course, the actual terrorists who killed them. Then you should, and then here she says, we want to guarantee Iran can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Okay, again, Iran was not close to obtaining a nuclear weapon. Donald Trump told us he completely obliterated their capacity to obtain a nuclear weapon in the 12-day war. So I don't know why that's a point. Preventing this radical regime and its terrorist leaders from threatening America and our core national security interests is a clear-eyed and necessary objective. Killing terrorists is good for America. 49 of the most senior Iranian regime leaders, including Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, have already been wiped off the face of the earth so far in the opening strikes of Operation Epic Fury. Finally, while Operation Midnight Hammer did obliterate, that's the 12-day war, did obliterate Iran's major nuclear sites, the regime was fully committed to rebuilding their nuclear program, and they refused to make a deal. Despite months of extensive talks and good faith efforts by President Trump's top negotiators. Again, back to the nuke shit. They didn't have any capacity to build their nuclear weapons. They don't have the correct grade uranium for nuclear weapons right now. And even if they did obtain a nuclear weapon, they don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles to strike the United States. So this is all crap. They weren't even close to getting any of those things. Finally, she says, for 47 years, the Iranian regime has actively and intentionally facilitated the killing of Americans while chanting death to America and funding other bloodthirsty terrorists seeking to destroy the United States and all Western civilization. Prior American leaders were too weak and cowardly to do anything about it. Now President Donald J. Trump is correcting decades of cowardice and holding those responsible for the deaths of Americans accountable. Their brutal attacks and threats will finally end under President Trump. You want to know what's interesting? Iran has never been held liable for any terrorist attacks on American soil. Wrong type of Muslim. Okay. All of the terrorist attacks on American soil have been perpetrated by terrorist groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Those are Sunni Muslim groups, okay? Not Shias. Not the Sunni Muslims, the Osama bin Ladens of the world, hated Iran just as much as they hated the United States, okay? There are like two teams over there. And the terrorist head chopper team is not the Iranians, actually. Those are the other kind of Muslims. So this whole it's completely incoherent, all of this, that we had to do this to prevent terrorism or she doesn't come right out and say it, but it's kind of implied that, with the whole terrorism thing, that this is some kind of revenge for 9/11 or other terrorist attacks that Iran had no part in. So again, Matt Walsh's whole point was the messaging for this war has been all over the place. The propaganda has been terrible. And the press secretary just comes out and reinforces exactly what he's saying. None of this shit makes any sense at all. So let's then jump to, we're here now. Okay. We shouldn't be here. None of the justifications make sense. Nobody's even pretending the justifications make sense. You got other people unassociated with the administration saying, well, our allies have interests in the region and protecting their security is important. And the United States has, oil interests and has interest in the stability of the region. So that justifies the war. The administration has not mentioned anything about that. So these people are all over the place. But we're here now. The Iranian government leadership is gone. So now what's it mean? Because Donald Trump campaigned against this entire thing. And so does his base abandon him over? The last polling I saw, Americans oppose war with Iran 4-1. Okay. So 80% of Americans don't want war with Iran. But here we are. We got it anyways. Because democracy, right? Yay. Everybody cheer for democracy. But now we got to say, okay, all right. We're here. What's going to happen? After, same thing with Venezuela. It was really unpopular to go to war with Venezuela. But after Trump kidnapped Maduro, or, whatever term you want to put to that, arrested him, special military operation, whatever term you like. After the capture of Maduro, Americans felt good about it. It was a win. No American casualties were taken. He gave out a Medal of Honor during the State of the Union to an American hero, and Maduro's sitting in a prison cell. So Americans feel good about that. Americans like to win. Okay, this is the consequentialist argument. If this goes well, okay, and already the first few days of this operation have seen success. Okay, Khamenei's dead. A lot of the other generals are dead. If this ends well, okay, and when I say well, either America pulling out and declaring victory and, Iran finding a stable leader, or maybe Israel going in and taking care of the occupation, which they don't have the manpower to do, but maybe they could set up a puppet. This ends relatively quickly with a stable Iran. Trump is going to get a big boost out of this. Okay. Americans like to win, and this is really going to help Trump. But if this goes poorly, then Donald Trump's going to take a big hit. He's going to be seen as just another neocon president, and he's just another Bush Republican that got roped into another war in the Middle East by Israel. So the way I see it, this is a huge roll of the dice that Trump doesn't need. Some people would say Trump does need it because he's so unpopular now after covering up the Epstein files, but I don't think he needs it. It's a huge roll of the dice. There's no plan to replace the current regime. It's not something America needed. What I call the risk-adjusted returns are not worth it. This may end up well, just like with Venezuela. This thing could end up relatively well, but the odds are against it. And even if it does go well, okay, America wasn't at risk to begin with. So what are we really gaining here? But man, do we have a lot to lose. We've got almost, I think it's like 10 American service members are dead already. We had millions of dollars of aircraft shot down. A lot of Iranians have been killed. Last I've seen, it's, somewhere in the neighborhood between 50 and 150 civilians have been killed in Iran. So this isn't without its consequences. And we're going to see some economic consequences. We're going to see a rise in oil prices. The Strait of Hormuz is being shut down or attempted to be shut down by the Iranian military, which makes the price of a lot of different goods go up. There are going to be consequences here, and the risk-adjusted returns just aren't worth it. Again, because America doesn't really get anything out of this. This whole thing was for Israel. Okay. The no plan thing really bothers me. This is really like just the recycling of the Libya playbook. What did Hillary Clinton say? We came, he saw, he died. I mean, that's really it. You kill the leader, in Gaddafi's case, brutally. And then Libya, believe it or not, is a shithole. It was never a great place to live, okay? But now the state's completely disintegrated. The country doesn't even exist. There's just a a couple regions that are being ruled by the big cities there, the local warlords. There are slave markets out in the streets. And remember that this is what Obama and Hillary Clinton said, we'll just kill the leader and we'll let the people decide. That's just what Trump, Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz are saying right now. We kill the leader and we let the people decide. But Libya disintegrated, and now the place is a violent hellhole. ISIS ended up taking it over for a little while. So if you're thinking about your next Mediterranean vacation in some different destinations, you're probably going to want to rule out Libya, because again, that's Libya is just another product of American foreign policy. But let's talk about Lindsey Graham. Let's see what his take on it is here. The genius Lindsey Graham, foreign policy mastermind.
Trump wrote this, quote, hopefully the IRGC and police will peacefully merge with the Iranian patriots and work together as a unit to bring back the country to the greatness it deserves. Is hope the plan for the future of Iran?
No, the future of Iran is going to be determined by the Iranian people. The new Iran, whatever it is, whether it's a cleric or a representative democracy, our goal is to make sure it cannot become, again, the largest state sponsor of terrorism. That's a win for us.
But is there a plan to make sure that happens, Senator? Is there a plan? Does the president have a plan to guarantee that that happens?
No, it's not his job or my job.
That's fucking crazy, number one. So number one, it's not the American president's job to go kill foreign leaders he doesn't like, especially without a declaration of war. Like, and Lindsey Graham's like, it's not my job to have a plan for the country whose government we just assassinated en masse. Like, yeah, it kind of fucking is, dude. How are you going to just go fucking destroy this country's government and then say, it's not really our job. The Iranian people are going to decide. Like, okay, if they're so dangerous, okay, the Iranian government has all these, weapon stocks and launchers and all this shit. What if someone even crazier takes over? And we saw that in Libya. They said, well, how could it be worse than Gaddafi? He gasses his own people. He's going to go genocidal. He's crazy. And then ISIS took over. Actually, much worse than Gaddafi ever was, okay? So this is just such bullshit that people like Lindsey Graham are going to sit there and say, it's not really our job. Our job's to go around killing foreign leaders, not worry about what's going to happen afterwards. Fuck Lindsey Graham.
To do this, how many times do I have to tell you? Our job is to make sure Iran is no longer the largest state sponsor of terrorism, to help the people reconstruct a new government, no boots on the ground. We don't own, this idea you break it, you own it. I don't buy that one bit. It's in America's interest to make sure the Ayatollah is dead. He's dead.
It's just hard to fucking believe a guy like that really exists in our government, that someone like that could keep getting elected, man. It's not in America's interest to go around and just kill foreign leaders. Name one terrorist attack the Ayatollah committed on American soil right here. How exactly did he attack the American people? We'll all wait. Such fucking bullshit. Number one state sponsor of terror. Okay, really? Was it him that did 9/11? Or is it actually the guy that is now in charge of Syria that we're backing? That guy's actually fucking Al-Qaeda. Al-Jalani or whatever his name is. President Trump invited him to the United States. He went and visited New York, the UN. He was a commander of Al-Qaeda who actually attacked the United States. And we're totally fine with him being in charge because he serves our interests in the Middle East. Now, not really our interests, mostly Israel's interests. But he's our guy, apparently. It's fucking incredible that these people make these points still here. So, Libya playbook all over again. Blow it up. Let it become a failed state. There's an argument to be made that the people of Iran are not the people of Libya, and that the people of Iran, again, have a history of democracy that the people of Libya don't, and maybe they'll put it together. But it's going to get uglier before it gets prettier. That's for sure. So for some of the costs, I mean, we've already talked about the Americans being killed. That's terrible. Several aircraft were shot down in a friendly fire incident over Kuwait. You see, there's videos of the Kuwaitis that they run up on our pilots that are, ejected, and they're okay, but they parachute down, and the Kuwaitis are like interrogating them, thinking they're Iranian or something, and the pilots are just like pointing to their sleeves, like, "No, dude, like American, get away from me, back up." It's kind of entertaining if it wasn't actually, terrifying. Those pilots really could have been hurt. Uh, and of course, leave it to our regional allies to commit friendly fire over there in the Middle East, knocking out, millions of dollars in aircraft for us. Thank you, Kuwait. Untold amounts of money have been spent moving assets are into the region. I heard estimates up to like $1 billion already, moving all our oil tankers, all of our naval assets. I think it's the Ford Strike Group. They're moving over there. And then there's the huge risk to Donald Trump's credibility. Like, he's really risking his presidency here. If this doesn't go well for him, this is going to be the black eye of his second term, on top of already the Epstein file issues he's been having that are not going to go away no matter how much he tries to cover it up with stuff like this. And then there's the huge risk of Iranian civil war, which, you look at Iraq, I think the excess deaths after our invasion of Iraq and the, ensuing civil war, it was like 1 million Iraqis died. Something like that could happen in Iran. And that's a big deal. It's not, again, I know we're America first here and that's what we care about, but man, like, those chickens come home to roost. If you start a civil war in somebody's country and 1 million people die, you are going to see terrorist attacks in your country. And we already saw one, that guy in Austin, shot up. I don't know how many people were shot in that, but he was likely an Iranian sympathizer. So these things happen. And then there's one more big cost that, nobody talks about, is the incentive to develop nuclear weapons. Countries like Libya, Iraq, Iran, they negotiated their weapons away, and then they were overthrown because they didn't, Gaddafi gave up his weapons and the US came in and had him killed. That's just what happened in Iran. They had negotiated away the JCPOA, their nuclear weapons program. They tried to restart it back up after the 12-day war. It was destroyed, according to Trump, and then we overthrow their regime. So countries like North Korea, they break out, they get their nuclear weapons, and they're left alone. So what the United States has done is created this incentive structure to break out and get nuclear weapons. Whoever takes over Iran, if they are, another radical cleric or something like that, which could very well happen, they will break out and get a nuclear weapon. They're not even going to try to negotiate with the United States because it's not in good faith. They know that even if they reach a deal with one president, a new president could come in, rip the whole thing up, and commit a regime change. So there's the only deterrence to keep the United States out of your backyard is do what North Korea did. You break out, you get a nuclear weapon. So that's what we're going to see more of now. That regime's still standing. So the incentive structure is not shocking. What did Milton, I think it was Milton Friedman said, show me the incentive, I'll show you the result. What we're going to get is more enemies to the United States trying to obtain a nuclear weapon. So that's the situation we're going to be left in for all this. And now it's back to who benefits. Why did Donald Trump do this? We know Israel's wanted this war with Iran for a long time, and for good reason. I don't even blame Israel for wanting this war, actually. It's in their interest. Iran has attacked Israel many times using proxies, direct missile attacks, etc., because they view the Israeli state as illegitimate. They believe that's Palestinian land, and they want to, Hamas and Iran are both Shia Muslims, and they want to stand up for what they view as their people. Obviously, standing up for your people should not include terrorism, but Iran does that. They do commit attacks against Israel. So of course Israel wants regime change, and they don't really care about what happens next in Iran, because to them they see this threat as existential. Okay. It's true. All that stuff is true. It's easy to see why Israel wants this war. And Israel has the right to respond however they see fit. I don't blame. I've heard that it was Israeli strikes that killed the Ayatollah and the top of their government. I don't blame them for that. Good for them as far as I'm concerned. If they want to go fight that war, they should be able to do it. But why does the United States have to be dragged into it? Netanyahu visited the White House 7 times in 1 year. Why is it not surprising when the Israeli prime minister visits 7 times, visiting a president that campaigned on not starting a war in Iran? All of a sudden, Netanyahu shows up, they get their war. It's just so clear that Israel pushed for this, okay? We get roped into a war of aggression against Israel's #1 regional adversary, okay? The only regional adversary left in the Middle East that could stand up to Israel, because we already paid off Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Egypt. And again, Iran did not attack America. They don't even have missiles that could hit the USA. They weren't close to obtaining them. They weren't on the edge of developing nukes. Let's just play the video of Trump. We've brought this up. I have this video somewhere here.
Capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
This is right after the 12-day war, Operation Midnight Hammer.
Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
There you go. Completely and totally obliterated. Iran did not have nukes. They were not close to obtaining nukes. So let's play this next video. You know what? Let's just jump right into it. Rubio said, this is really the nail in the coffin. And just so we have our evidence in order here, okay? We have a president that campaigned on not going to war with Iran, okay? Then we have an Israeli prime minister who has been hell-bent on destroying all Israel's regional adversaries, okay? He visits the White House 7 times. And then we get this video from Marco Rubio. Let's see what Marco Rubio has to say. He wasn't supposed to say this. I can promise you that. He got in trouble for this one.
Missile forces in the south and in the north, for that matter, had already been activated to launch. In fact, those had already been pre-positioned. The third is the assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before...
So, #1. Yo. Are you kidding? I can't believe he actually came out and said this. He said, we knew there was going to be action by Israel. And if we didn't act, our soldiers were going to be hit in retaliation. He's saying Israel forced us into this war. It's plain as day. Let's let him finish this.
They launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act. Going back.
So all of a sudden, this is starting to make a lot more sense. Israel came, or I should say Prime Minister Netanyahu came to the White House and told Donald Trump, we're striking Iran. We're going to do it. And if you don't join us, your soldiers are going to get hit. So Trump had a choice. He said, you know what, I can join in this attack and I can make sure it goes well. And if I send my jets in there, I send in, my Navy for missile defense, I can give my soldiers stationed around Iran the best chance of survival I can. Okay. Or I could sit back, I could do nothing. And then when Israel, maybe does a half-assed job taking out all of the ballistic missile launchers, those missiles come right for American bases and thousands of American soldiers could be killed. All of a sudden, you kind of see why Donald Trump, somebody who campaigned against fighting in Iran, is faced with a pretty tough decision. And Rubio comes out and just spells it all out nice and right for us. We appreciate that, Marco Rubio. So what do? I mean, that puts Trump in a really tough situation. And he said, you know what? We're going to be forced into this war anyways. Iran doesn't care if it's just Israeli fighters or fighter jets or Israeli and American fighter jets that cross our borders. They're going to see it as an attack by America, and they are going to retaliate against our soldiers. So Trump was pushed into this. And you can still blame him. You can say he should have, used back channels to tell Iran that we're not a part of it, don't attack us. He could have, you could list any number of things that you wish you would have done to get us out of this. But you can see why, when the American soldiers' lives are in your hands, you would want to be the hammer, not the nail. You can kind of get that. Then on top of that, if it goes well, then Trump can take all the glory. He can, help cover up the Epstein issues that have been going on and say, look, I delivered a huge win for the United States. The whole thing, it's all starting to make so much more sense to me. Anyways, it was hard to see how Trump went from, all of a sudden, I just want to go attack Iran, compared to what he was elected to do, keep us out of the Middle East. But at the end of the day, he's the commander in chief and he's got to protect our soldiers. And protecting America and, her military bases abroad is probably one of the biggest jobs of the president. And I'm not making excuses for Trump here. I wish he would have found a better way to go about this, but he didn't. He decided to do this, and now we have to, wish him the best and hope things go well for him. So the last little bit here that I wanted to say, I heard, so one of the theories I heard kind of debunking Marco Rubio, we were saying, well, he's just trying to provide cover. He's lying, essentially. Marco Rubio in that clip's lying. He's trying to provide a pretext for war, so it's not justified for these attacks on the legality of Donald Trump's war, him not going to Congress first. So what Marco Rubio is trying to do is lie there and say Israel forced us into it. There was an imminent attack coming against our soldiers. So Donald Trump had to act without pre-authorization from Congress. Okay. And that, and these same people are saying, and the theory's backed up because Donald Trump his whole military plan here had been planned out for months. That's why he was moving the Ford Carrier Strike Group and all of our planes and naval assets into the region. She was preparing for the strike. If he had just been, given this ultimatum by Netanyahu a week ago, why did he start moving all those assets there beforehand? And the short answer is because Israel has been signaling to Trump for a while that they wanted this war and that they were going to attack despite what Trump was going to do. So Trump's only move after that is to bring all of his military assets to bear in the Middle East, because a lot of those naval assets, are missile defense. So if Trump did decide that he was going to let Israel go it alone, and Iran did try and retaliate against our bases, our Navy could then, and Air Force, could go try and intercept a lot of those missiles, save American lives defensively. And then if Americans were killed in preemptive strikes by Iran, then we would have the military hardware there to strike back. Now with a lot more legitimate reasoning if Iran had hit us first. So it's not a good argument to say Donald Trump, planned this whole thing out months in advance. That's why he moved all the military hardware there. No, he knew after communicating with Israel a lot that there was going to be an attack on Iran, and whether he chose to participate in it or not, he was going to need all the military might he could muster in the Middle East to defend American soldiers. That's pretty clear. It's a pretty ridiculous argument to just stand up and say, well, maybe Marco Rubio's lying and, this whole thing's just a big coincidence. No, it all makes perfect sense what Marco Rubio was saying. And after he said it, I was kind of upset with myself for not thinking of it sooner. So thanks, Marco Rubio. We appreciate somebody telling the truth every once in a while, even if you go try and backpedal and cover it up later. So we're going to come back to you guys in a couple days with some of the lies in response to this war, and we will see you next time.